Well, good morning, everyone, or afternoon, or evening, or middle of the night, as it happens to be. So we're having a day long today, and we start with the format that we usually have on Saturday mornings, so that anybody who tunes in for the regular program still gets to participate in that. And what that is for those who are new is Dhamma reflection and then some discussion, Q&A. And that goes till like 10:30. And then at that point, everyone who's intending to stay online or in person will be going into noble silence. And here at the meditation center, we'll be getting the meal ready and setting up some tables outside and chairs and have the meal offering. And the monastics will eat in here with our bowls, and anyone who wants to can also sit in here or outside. It's going to be a beautiful day here today. And I think most people probably have a pretty good sense of noble silence. And I also want to encourage that for everyone who's joining online to, as much as possible, spend the day in noble silence and really use this time to reflect. I know the last couple of day longs, I haven't asked people to be in noble silence. It seemed like those first couple of day longs, it was nice for people to have some sense of community and get to talk with each other a bit. But I also can, as any of you who have practiced with noble silence and even a short retreat, like one day, how much deeper we can go if we stay more quiet. The other thing about noble silence is that it's not intended to be absolute silence. So as people are getting the meal together, if you have a question, quietly ask someone. It's really a practice to think about what's worth saying, or what really is good to say, or to when to connect, and when not to. So we just keep that in mind. So I'm going to start by just offering some reflections. Today the theme is changing, and it's fine with me if we use that for the title of this morning's talk, and then this afternoon when we come back together around 1:00, I think I'll offer a guided meditation, perhaps. There's also, for the people here, there's going to be some movement. Deborah's offered to lead people in some Qigong after the meal, or Qigong, Tai Chi, something, Qigong. And then later around 3 p.m. we'll have some time together, a Q&A, before we maybe do a final meditation, depending on how many questions and much discussion we want to have before we go.
And people in the room, if you need more cushions, those green ones are good for your knees or legs or whatever, or extra under you.
Yeah, and during those longer periods, like from 10:30 to 1, or in the afternoon from the guided meditation until we come back together at 3, I really want to encourage everyone to do whatever sitting and walking, and of course we'll have the meal, all of it as mindfully and as meditatively as you can. One of the things, this is a little bit on the topic of changing, everybody, we definitely change through our life. And as we develop whatever it is that we're doing with our time, we also change, right? We learn things. In the early years teaching meditation retreats, I tended to have a pretty, I'm thinking the words rigid, strict. It wasn't intended to be rigid or strict, but there'd be these really defined periods of sitting meditation and walking, and there would be bells and all of that. And then the last few years, particularly starting at Cloud Mountain in the middle of the pandemic. I taught a month-long retreat, and then other periods of time, and I just started to relax that and give people, 2 or 3 hours to really decide for themselves when is it the right time to sit, and when is the right time to go do walking meditation, when's the right time to take a walk in the forest. After the first month, this one man said to me, I think I've been spoiled for all other retreats, because having that ability to intuit what the body and mind are going to benefit most from was really a nice thing. So if it feels like you're kind of left on your own for a little while during this day long, that's okay. Make sure that it's working with our own mind and our own system, understanding what is going to be supportive as we deepen in the practice is really valuable. So as I said, I want to focus on changing, and I don't know if you have ever felt this way in your life, or if you've known other people that seem extremely resistant or feeling resistant to change. And some of the people in my life that I'm thinking of, it seems like a tremendous amount of effort needs to go into trying to stay the same and to keep things the same. And when actually, changing our habits, changing our approaches, changing our views and our perceptions, this is actually natural, and it's the learning of life. And then, when we look at the Buddhist teachings, it's constantly really suggesting to us that we grow and develop and change. And I'm gonna give a second here because we've got another couple people coming through the door. Welcome, Audrey. Come on in. And find a spot. There are some chairs in the back over here if you want a chair. Hi, Andy. You also prefer a chair to a floor? Whatever you want. There's mats and cushions. Good to see you both. So when we think about our growth and development in the practice, one of the big challenges is to deal with, work with, even notice what it is that we do just based on our conditioning, how we see the world, how we approach things, and when is it appropriate, when is it important to actually change something, to intentionally change. And the indicators for that, first and foremost, is our suffering. When we're suffering, then we know there's something that we can change and want to change. Now, I feel like as practitioners, it's not just a matter of being willing to change. We have to be able to change, but we need to be eager to change. That eagerness of, I'm going to develop these qualities that the Buddha, is showing me are so important. And I'm going to investigate why what I'm experiencing right now hurts, or why I feel sad, angry, afraid, and what is it that I can change? How can I look at this differently, develop qualities and skills that can address this situation? How can I learn? military base nearby, and they've been buzzing the neighborhood for a couple of months now. Sorry. Things change, man. And, how can I, I'm sure you can hear that online. How can I develop the skills that will really and let go? How can I let go of what I'm clinging to that's going to bring about peace and equanimity in this situation that right now is causing me suffering? So when we think about conditioning, if we bring to our conscious awareness the fact that we're perceiving something or responding to things in a way that's just been very much conditioned into our process of who we think we are. Sometimes we feel like I'm making a conscious choice to do something or to be, like act in a certain way. But if I really think about it, like, this is actually the way my parents acted, or the way that, it's been a standard in my life. And then to observe and discern whether or not this is the way it's most helpful or most noble to perceive this and respond, most realistic in our perception and most noble in our way of acting. So I like Ajahn Brahm's way of talking about this. He's very much feels very certain that almost all of what we do and say and think is conditioned. And we have like this little sliver of free will which we can use to change. I think Ajahn Brahmali was using this. Maybe Ayya Chitananda will help with this, because she heard him talk about, you've got this huge, ocean liner or big barge or something.
Yes.
This
super
is
tanker shipping.
Super tanker.
Shipping ships.
Yeah.
Giant.
Yeah. Giant ship. This is you. This is your conditioning. This is your mode of operation. And then you've got this little tugboat, which is the free will, pulling it, turning it, and that we need to make use of that. And Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi says we have a modicum of free will, but a lot of the time we're on automatic pilot, really just following through with our conditioning. But when we have this idea in mind that we can change, and that we can change for the better, and we can change to the point of awakening, that we can get enlightened, and then really everything is different. Even along those stages of enlightenment, stream entry, once returning, non-returning, up to arahantship. At this point of stream entry, already there is such a change in the way we see the world, in the way we respond. And this is something that really I want to encourage for everyone. Change the way we're doing things, moving in that direction of stream entry and coming to that point in this lifetime. And what does it take? It takes that eagerness, for sure. And just the other night in the Sutta study, we were reading the simile of the snake sutta in the middle length discourses. And toward the end, it talks about the different, those 4 different levels of awakening, and also leading up to stream entry, the people who are a Dhamma follower or a faith follower, And the way those are described in the suttas by the Buddha is that a Dhamma follower is someone who comes to the Dhamma through learning, through study, through developing faith in the Dhamma, developing confidence in the Dhamma, through practice. I mean, one of the things that many of us appreciate about the Dhamma is that you're not asked to accept anything on blind faith. And how you accept the Dhamma is through reflective activity, really taking in what the Buddha said, taking in what we observe with the right perception to see what is impermanent as impermanent, what is suffering, dukkha as dukkha, what is non-self as non-self, what is ugly or beautiful according to Dhamma, that we actually see things in the right way. And then we develop the reflective acceptance of the Dhamma by taking it in and thinking it through and working it through and observing it in our experience. It's still not the deep, direct experience of those truths, but it's an acceptance of, okay, I get this intellectually. And then as we practice more and we continue to work with it, I feel like it's kind of like kneading bread dough, we got to keep working it. And then the connect, the lightning bolt, if you will, maybe that's not the right simile, because it's really, there can be this ongoing investigation that continues to solidify our understanding, but then there is something that happens that really drops it in, and we see differently, even differently than we thought, in reflecting on that particular principle of Dhamma that whatever we're working with at the time. So this is a Dhamma follower. They come through that, developing that confidence in the Dhamma. And the faith follower, the Buddha talked about as someone who develops confidence in the teacher with the big T, the Buddha. And maybe his stand-in supporters, the ones who are really teaching Dhamma. But you're developing a faith in, or a confidence in the person as you see them. And this is the way I feel about the Buddha, as I see the way the Buddha interacted with people, and see the way he taught the Dhamma in so many different ways to reach the audience he was with at the time, and the way he lived, the things he said to his attendants or his close disciples, and the way he didn't hold anything back from the teachings, and then the way he presented Dhamma and talked about different situations, and then seeing those situations and those same kinds of things appearing in my own life and my own practice, you develop that faith in the teacher. Confidence is probably a better word, because blind faith has nothing to do with this. The kind of faith that is promoted in some religions, where you believe in something you can't see just because someone told you this is the way it is. That is not what the Buddha was teaching, and that's not how the Dhamma works. So that a better word maybe for saddha, which is this faith, confidence, is probably the translation. Confidence is better, but it's very deep. So when a person is either coming through learning the Dhamma, or they're coming through the side of confidence in the teacher, and they're really eager to awaken, I think this is what it takes to be a faith follower or a Dhamma follower. And what it says in that sutta is, if that's the case, you will be a stream enterer before you die. It's got to have that fire in us to do it. And this is an eagerness to change. And so We know it's time to change when there's suffering. We know it's time to change when we see that we've got some conditioning that we want to shift. So how do you shift the conditioning? When Ajahn Brahm talks about it, he says, this is the brainwashing. We're all operating under the brainwashing that we've had. That's our conditioning. And then you got to get different brainwashing. Well, obviously it takes free will to get the different brainwashing. So don't neglect the idea that we do decide to do these things. But he said, put yourself in situations where you're being influenced and conditioned by good people, by good practices, by powerful, positive influences. And to remember that everything that we do, we're training the mind, we're conditioning the mind. When I was a software engineer, I knew I was training my mind to do that. I got to a point where I didn't want to be training my mind to do that anymore. Not to say you have to quit your job, but learning how to use whatever we are doing with our life as practice is a beautiful thing to do. And it makes whatever we're doing with our life easier, better, richer, deeper. And especially in the way we interact with each other. I have this little sutta, I'll show you just a little touch of, what it means to, have conditioning and be a source of really good conditioning. This is from the Anguttara Nikaya, 348, called Mountains. And the Buddha says, based on the Himalayas, the king of mountains, great sal trees grow in three ways. And I don't know if you've ever seen a sal tree, S-A-L, sal tree. They grow in Thailand. We've seen them and seen them blossom there. But you could think of any kind of tree you're used to, the mighty oaks or the great redwoods or whatever. And they grow in three ways. They grow branches, leaves, and foliage. They grow in bark and shoots, and they grow in softwood and hardwood. Based on the Himalayas, the king of mountains, great sal trees grow in these three ways. And then he says, so too, when the head of a family is endowed with faith, this is sada, the people in the family who depend on them grow in three ways. What three? They grow in faith, they grow in virtuous behavior, and they grow in wisdom. So any of us, we can reflect on the situation we grew up in. Some of us have parents with more or less saddha, more or less virtuous behavior, more or less wisdom. And we can make use of that conditioning. And we can also think of this in any other kind of context. If you look at your company where you work, what are the leadership? What's the leadership doing? I've worked in companies where I think the leadership was very virtuous, very customer oriented, very interested in doing good things in the world, very interested in being generous, kind, supportive of their employees. And I've worked in companies where the leadership is corrupt and they want to manipulate the clients, and they want to do things that are illegal. And it's like, and it's interesting to see how the people who work there, that aspect of their potential comes out, good or bad. So when every one of us is a source of influence for others, an example, we can choose to develop our own, what's faith mean here? Our own confidence in what's good, in what's wholesome, in what's holy. Our virtuous behavior, our own wisdom. We can also, whoever depends upon us, whoever looks to us, whether it's our children, whether it's even sometimes our parents look to us. Sometimes it's our neighbors. Sometimes it's our coworkers. We can be an influence. And this is part of conditioning. It's the part that, we take this stuff in, whether we like it or not, and others take in what we're offering too. So the verses here are, just as the trees that grow in dependence on the Rocky Mountain in a vast forest wilderness might become great woodland lords, so when the head of a family possesses faith and virtue, their partner, children, and relatives all grow in dependence upon them. So too their friends, their family circle, and those dependent on them. Those possessed with discernment see that virtuous person's good conduct, their generosity and good deeds, and emulate their example. So just think about it. It's about changing. We can, as we grow, I know my father, I always admired how he was learning and making an effort to improve himself to the day he died. And this is what we can do. And at the same time, not be discouraged, disappointed, upset, feeling guilty or bad about anything we've been doing. Like, I love this, set the past to zero. This is Ajahn Gana. He was saying, just zero the past. Don't waste any time feeling bad about what we've done out of the conditioning of the past. And don't be hard on ourselves, but be inspiring to ourselves, like really encourage ourselves to grow, to learn. And then I have one more sutta I want to share. This is also in the Anguttara Nikaya. It's number 5. In the Book of Fives, and number 10, called Disrespect. It starts with the negative. Mendicants, a disrespectful and irreverent mendicant. That's not a very good state to be in, I gotta say. If you're a mendicant, but if you're a practitioner, disrespectful and irreverent, with 5 qualities, can't achieve growth, improvement, or maturity in this teaching and training. And what 5? A disrespectful and irreverent mendicant who is faithless, shameless, imprudent, lazy, witless. They can't achieve growth, improvement, or maturity in this teaching and training. However, a respectful and reverent mendicant. So it's interesting that the Buddha starts there. It starts with a certain kind of humility, reverence, respect. And we don't get very far if we're arrogant, if we're full of ourselves, if we think we already have it all, down pat. In fact, the more enlightened people get, the more humble they become. And everybody likes humility, but how many of us want to do it? It's like, because we're trying to protect our ego and our, this is a lot of suffering. This is a good indication that, okay, step back, put it down. What are you like when there's no facade? What are you like when there's no, trying to project something like that ego? Can you interact without that armoring? Because the real protection is your virtue. The real protection is your humility, your kindness. So a respectful and reverent mendicant with 5 qualities can achieve growth, improvement, and maturity in this teaching and training. What 5? A respectful and reverent mendicant who is faithful, has sada, conscientious, that's hiri, we'll talk about that in a minute, and prudent, that's ottappa. Hiri ottappa is very important, 2 very important qualities. Energetic, that's in Pali, virya, and wise, panya. So if they're faithful, filled with faith, conscientious, prudent, energetic, and wise, they can achieve growth, improvement and maturity in this teaching and training. So let's talk a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about Hiri and Ottappa, essential for spiritual growth and development. And I've got a link here that I'm going to stick in the chat, I think. Maybe you can do that.
Yeah, I think we have to open it on Google Docs.
Okay, maybe later. Let's read it first.
Maybe not.
Okay, well, I guess we're not reading it first. This is an article by Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi called The Guardians of the World. The bright guardians of the world are Hiri and Ottappa. And they're these qualities of having, the Hiri is a self-respect. Like, you don't want to do things that are unwholesome because you have this self-respect. You don't want to pull yourself down in that way. And then Ottappa, so the Hiri is more of this internal kind of reflection. It's about the present moment, what you're choosing to do or to not do. But it's this internal, like, yeah, I don't want to do that. This is your conscience in action. And then the Ottappa part is more external. You don't want to do things because you don't want the negative results. You don't want to have to hide something. You don't want the fear of retribution. You have the fear of retribution. You have the fear of the negative karma, the external results. And these two sides, you want to be conscientious, the internal Hiri, and you want to take care of your karma, which is the external, the Ottappa. Let's see if there's anything else in here. So Hiri, the sense of shame. So this is I'm a little, a lot of times they'll talk about it as shame, moral shame and moral dread. This is Bhikkhu Bodhi's translations, and that seems to trigger a lot of us Westerners who've been through enough shame. And so you don't have to go there. Conscience is probably a better translation. Okay, so I think that's probably all we need from that part. So one of the things that's valuable when we're looking at our own changing is to look back and see how much we've changed for the better. To really rejoice in that. Recognize that it's not always easy to develop in these ways and that we've made a lot of progress. And also celebrating the small changes we make. Like sometimes I'll see something that I want to change, or another, besides suffering and seeing, okay, there's something I need to change here in order to get beyond this suffering, this attitude or habit. We also learn from what other people tell us. They'll point out things that are causing problems, and that's another indication of time to change something. So how we accept feedback is very important to look at. And one of the things I've learned in monastic life is that if someone's giving me feedback and I'm immediately trying to explain myself, and it can really just feel like, hey, if they understood where I was coming from, they wouldn't be upset with me. But what that often comes off as is not listening. So I've learned over time to just take it in. Doesn't mean you have to agree or believe it. I tell people sometimes, take it in over here on your shoulder. Don't take it in here in the heart right away, like just hear it out. And sometimes it's valuable to respond, and sometimes it isn't, even if it's not true. But you can look for like where this person is and what they're experiencing, as much as you can discern it from what they're telling you and their, whole body language and everything. And then really reflect on it and see, is there something here that I can improve? And then if I do see, okay, I want to change this, I want to change this way that I'm acting or thinking or speaking, then it's not always easy to get it right away. Most of the time we don't. Maybe we do it and then we catch ourselves. Maybe even after those words get out, we catch ourselves. And then many of you have heard me say this before. I like this idea of, in my mind, playing it over. Sometimes with a good friend, you can say, can we rewind? This is very helpful. I love the rewind method. If you have an agreement with another person that, like when we catch ourselves, things have gone down a track that I don't want it to go down. There was a point at which it kind of went off the track. Can we go back to that point and start again? And if you're both, like wanting this kind of development, this is a really good friend, whoever it is in your life, then they'll let you rewind, and then you can walk through doing it in a way that's more skillful. And this is extremely helpful. So even if there's no one external to do that with, we can do it inside ourselves. Come back, okay, at that point, what would I have liked to said? How would I have liked to acted? And then play it through in the mind. And a lot of you know that I think of this as like the dressage, horses running the steeplechase. And, like when I was younger, I really loved horses and I had horses, and sometimes I'd watch this on television, and, you see these riders taking these jumps on these amazing horses, and then, one gets to a jump and it's all timed. That's how you win. It's not like everybody's doing it at once, but it's like timed event. And then this horse, it doesn't clear the jump, or maybe balks at the jump and pulls aside. And you think, okay, they lost, that's that, they're not going to win. But instead of just walking off the course, they start again, and they go back to that jump and they jump it. And then they finish the course slowly, but they do it. And so I think this is what I do in my mind. I take my mind back to that point and meet the challenge in the way that I would like to meet the challenge. And that helps tremendously for the next time it comes up. And no matter how many times you have to go back and replay, no matter how many times we kind of like it gets out there, because we've got this very strong conditioning. Who knows how many lifetimes we've had the conditioning we have. This is how we can change. And sometimes the mind gets more used to being trained in this way, and then it goes quicker and easier. And then, after a while of doing it in the way you want to, and listening maybe, or responding in ways that are kinder, or whatever it is, at some point, maybe this old habit comes up again. Not to beat ourselves up, not to think, oh, I've lost ground. It's not like that. It's just like, this one slipped through. Okay, we'll come back. We'll come back and do it again. Have the patient endurance. We can see why the Buddha said that patient endurance is the highest austerity. And it's like, we really do need the patience with our mind. I really think of my mind like a small child, or a dog I need to train or something. It's like, it's got all this conditioning, and we need to do some new pattern development here. And What are we developing? Those qualities, all those qualities. The Buddha's got lists and lists of them, right? We're developing the 5 faculties, we're developing the 4 powers, we're developing the Noble Eightfold Path, we're developing the 7 factors of enlightenment. Any place that you look in the suttas, any place you look in the Dhamma, the Buddha's talking about the advantages of developing generosity, virtue, the precepts, the Brahma Viharas, these wings to awakening, all the Bodhipakya Dhammas. And this we can do with a kind of eagerness, a kind of joy, really seeing the development and the benefit, and seeing the benefit in the people we interact with. So I think I'll stop there and open it up for questions and comments. So, is there anything you'd like to say or ask? I always find that's where things get deeper. The questions, comments. I don't know if there are any hands up out there.
Thank you.
Ryan.
It resonated for me, so thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yes, James.
So I had a Dharma session this week, in which the leader was talking a lot about the, the Buddha's advice on dealing with difficult emotions and the various ways in which we can do that. In fact, she was more of a psychologist, really, so it was more of probably more psychology than Buddhism, but definitely related to it. But in a breakout room afterwards, I brought up the thing about how there's a difference between moods and emotions, like how they seem very similar, but there's obviously a fair bit of difference because emotions tend to be short-lived. They're sort of in the body, the thought I came up with was the idea of moods are almost like wearing glasses of different colors. They say about rose-tinted glasses, and they just seem to shape the way you see the world. And so we're thinking, because I guess I have a lot of low sort of moods that probably negatively color my life. And we were discussing how do you adjust this? How do you instigate change in these moods, because they're just so much more encompassing in life. They seem so constant. They're going to last weeks or months or possibly even years, really. So, and somebody helpfully suggested the idea of, like, obviously reconditioning yourself very gradually. They were saying about sort of bringing up gratitude in the mornings, for example, being grateful for things, and it actually tied in because I do a Zoom session with a Dharma friend that I've fortunately managed to acquire. So we talk through these things, and we're both we're both kind of on a meta binge this week, or that's what we could have agreed to do. And I think that's probably something that I really need to be digging into, because the more you do metta, the more you bring up that positive states of mind. How can it not sort of reshape this mood and therefore make those glasses that you see the world with that much more rose tinted rather than dark and gloomy? So I'm making more efforts in that regard, because I know it's ridiculous. I honestly think that the metta is probably almost like a magic pill that would solve a lot of what ails me. And yeah, I've never quite got round to really getting my teeth into doing it. It's like maybe part of me is just so aversive, it just doesn't want to let go of the aggravation, the annoyance with all the things in the world that maybe yeah, it's probably like such a deep-seated part of myself that to really become infused with metta, it would actually be letting go of a part of what I believe myself to be, and yet I think back, and I know, like the other morning I did a bit, and sort of like into the day I just went out in the world with a lot more of a positive sort of attitude. And I know previously I've had times when, because I have my main meditation in the morning, I've had times when it's gone particularly well, and I just go out into the world just feeling so much more loving, and it's like, oh, why don't I want more of that? Like, I don't know whether there's a question in there really, so much of a ramble, but something that I should be working on a lot more.
That's a great ramble, James. Thank you. Because I think it touches all of us, I like your distinction. I think it's an important distinction between emotions and moods. And I know that on a kind of Buddhist intellectual Dhammic debate level, people could argue with me on what I'm going to say now, but I really, when we talk about the khanda of feeling, I don't usually go to painful, pleasant, or neutral. It means a lot more to me to think about emotions. What it feels like when there's joy and happiness, what it feels like in my body, what it feels like when there's fear, what it feels like when there's depression or sadness or grief, or you name it. And for me, like you're saying, you can have feelings come through, like you're in a conversation with someone, or you meet someone and they're telling you about their story. It triggers something in you and you feel the emotions, but that's not the same as a mood. And I relate the mood more to mental state. Like when the Buddha talks about mind, I have a mind that's affected by lust, or I have a mind affected by hatred, or a not, or a mind affected by delusion or not, or these different things. And it's certainly, these are related, obviously, but that mood, like you said, kind of coloring everything. This is a very important, and one of the problems I didn't mention is that I meet people who are like, you mean you can change that? Even something like they've got the habit of never, really closing the car door when they take stuff out, and then somebody else has to come along and do it, or leaving stuff laying around the Vihara. This is the kind of stuff when you enter the holy life, you have to learn to change. Even if you leave your shoes in front of the door for like 30 seconds, they're in somebody else's way. I leave something on a countertop, I come back in 90 seconds and it's moved because somebody else needed that space. You just learn, no, don't leave your stuff around. But you'll have someone who's like, oh, I can change that. I mean, I've been doing this all my life. Doesn't matter, it's changeable. And I think your idea of, I can change this negative outlook. I can change this go-to of aversion. I can change this go-to of checking out and going into some kind of delusive state. And how? Well, I like your approach. Get a buddy who maybe has similar tendencies, then you both want to change, and that really helps. It's the difference between going to the gym and working out 5 days a week with someone else that makes sure you're there, because you do it more for somebody else sometimes than you'll do it for yourself. And then even Ajahn Brahm, the other day I heard him given a talk where this advice he got early on was, in the morning when you wake up, go in front of the mirror and smile. Just push it up there, really smile, because it starts to release some of those chemicals. And it's like, just to smile, just to bring up a thought of someone's kindness, to bring up a thought that, yeah, your nuns love you. They really do. And, you know, like to remember those beautiful things and bring that more into the mind. And, you know, it's so true what you're saying about how we can have this conditioning and it becomes so much a part of, we think that's us. So it's another place where the whole understanding of not self comes in. This is not a constant here, no matter what we think about ourselves. It's not, it's a process. If we put in new inputs, we're going to get different outcomes. But we cling.
I think that's one of my problems with getting into metta is that I kind of need to be in. I think it's very hard to just bring up from nothing. You kind of have to be in the mood to do it. You know, I almost feel like I mean, I do feel plenty of positive sort of feelings during meditation. Not necessarily might be characterized as metta, but it's definitely a mood thing. It's hard to just flick a switch. But I suppose that's just a skill you develop. Like I've developed some skill in meditation, and with another 4 years in work, I might develop some skill in metta as well, and it'll become less of a mood thing and a bit more of a flick that switch kind of thing. You know, it's
Maybe
you've got to
4
start
weeks.
simple.
Yeah, maybe 4 weeks, James, not 4
Yeah.
years, but maybe, you know, but it's really true. And it's okay to notice, yeah, I'm not really in the mood to be happy right now. Or I'm not really in the mood. Why? Do I like this suffering? What am I getting out of this? There's something I'm getting out of this. What is it? Is it a feeling of, you know, is there, because, you know, the ego likes to be there and be kind of like, I'm a thing. Is it like that's what makes me feel like a solid self? Or, you know, like, what is it? What is it? And, you know, sometimes the external influences are also strong. We can be in a, you know, it can be the weather, the cloudiness, it can be the, you know, like everybody knows there's a lot more suicide happening in the north in the winter than in other places where there's sun and, you know, people are moving and, you know, like more expressive and more, you know, like more expressive in loving and hug and all of that, you know, and it's like the whole environment can be kind of a downer and sometimes. And then can we bring up some light?
You're practically describing England there, you know. It's like and you must be aware that moaning is a British pastime.
I did live there for a couple of years, you know.
Yeah, I didn't know whether you you know, but yeah, it's a cliche, but they like such a moan. Honestly, it's I wish I could be amongst positive people, even if it was like a bit over the top sometimes. You know, I honestly, one of the things I'm doing is actually trying to redirect people around me as well at work. I've actually openly said, right, that's enough moaning. What's good in your world? I've said that more than a few times. Yeah, it's just like. I get it does get you down, but then I think one of the positive things I bring up in meditation is the idea that maybe I can have a positive impact on the world as well, even in small ways. So yeah, maybe.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And you have a positive impact on us, so I know you can do it there.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, James. Yeah, Mahesh?
So conditioning is so hard, as you mentioned. It's hard to change. It keeps coming back. So how do we work with it without losing confidence or without losing faith that things are going to change?
Yeah.
Because it also feels a little bit fake when we try to behave in a different way when conditioning is telling us something, right? And also it's not and it doesn't change even though keep doing it differently. It's a long process.
It can be, and it can be a long process, and like you know, like you gotta fake it till you make it sometimes, because you know, like we, at least, because it really does change us if we say the things the way we want to say them, or we do the things the way we want to do them, even when we don't feel it yet. Then it starts to affect our feeling and our mental attitude. And it can be, you know, it can require perseverance, but we need to remind ourselves of the danger of maintaining this old way of doing it. The Buddha said this. He said that when he was developing as an unenlightened bodhisattva, when he was developing, he would see something, and there's a whole series of things that he puts out there in a sutta. He would see the next thing that would be beneficial, and he would think, why don't I see that would be better? Why doesn't my mind launch out and do it? And he said, it's because I haven't seen the danger in not doing it, or I haven't seen the danger. Like, I remember particularly, he got to the point where he was, you know, in my meditation, it would be better if I didn't have thought. Why doesn't my mind launch out and like put an end to thinking? Because I haven't yet seen the danger in having thought. And so this is part of it, and we remind ourselves, but look at the downside of what I'm doing in this pattern, in this conditioning. The more we see that, the more, and sometimes, you know, like James is saying, and what I said earlier, you know, like sometimes realizing how much better it is for the people around us can really be a motivation. It's like, you know, this is going to be better for my family, even if it's not something that we're directly doing with them or to them, but you know, like we can help the mind by reflecting on how much better it is when I do behave in this other way. And we need to like keep giving ourselves that encouragement. So basically we have to be creative and determined. And if we need more determination, we have to rely on our good spiritual friends, whether it's the nuns or it's listening to positive Dhamma talks that really encourage this, or reading the suttas where you see the Buddha is constantly saying, hey, develop this, develop that. You know, if you're acting like this way over here, you know, without the hiri, without the ottappa, with, you know, witless, you know, say, wait a minute, I don't want to be witless, you know, say, you know, just really look for the encouragement wherever you can find it. And don't let yourself fall away. There's no benefit. And then, even if necessary, think about what happens after you die. Where are you going to go? It's going to be in the same kind of trajectory you're on now. What do you want that to be? So, you know, we can encourage ourselves, and to be, I think we can encourage ourselves more when we're not so heavy and harsh on the negative side of our personality or our conditioning. You know, it's like, okay, that's the way it's been. I don't have to keep going like that. Even if it takes a while, it's okay. Sometimes it's good to think about the long view. This has been going on for lifetimes. And now I can't expect to change it in 10 minutes, but you know, let me just work at it. Any progress that I make in this lifetime is going to be a huge benefit to this whole trajectory of my lifetimes. Again, is, you know, that's the conventional way of talking about it. But yeah, we have to find ways to turn to the positive. You know, that when the Buddha said that, and I love this sutta, and most of you know this, so sorry, you're going to hear it again. So in the Book of Nines, in the Anguttara Nikaya, there's this sutta number 5 called Powers, and it ends by saying, if you develop these 4 powers You never have to have these 5 fears ever again. You never have to be afraid of, how does it, yeah, you never have to be afraid of, but there's the first one, you never have to be afraid of
losing your livelihood.
You never have to be afraid of losing your livelihood. You never have to be afraid of getting a bad reputation. You never have to be afraid of, of being in a group and feeling weak or frightened. You never have to be afraid of death, and you never have to be afraid of what comes after death. That's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. What are those 4 powers? And then, usually I say, so do you want to know what the 4 powers are? People, yeah. So
Oh, no.
knowing what's wholesome and unwholesome, wisdom. That's the way he defines wisdom there. Knowing the difference between what's wholesome and what's unwholesome. Energy, having the energy to put that into action. Living blamelessly, so moral virtue. That there isn't anything, everybody gets blamed, even the Buddha. People will blame. It's just like in America, you can sue somebody for anything. It doesn't have to make any sense. But if you really aren't guilty, you don't have to worry about it. Blamelessness. And the 4th one is sustaining favorable relationships, which was really a surprise to me when I first read that sutta. It's like, what? I never saw this in a list before. But it's this, like really, really being generous, being kind, staying connected with people that you can look up to. The Buddha said, find the friends who have more faith, confidence than you do, and emulate that. Find the friends who are more generous than you are and emulate that. Find the ones who have more wisdom than you do and emulate that. Really, really fun. Build into your life the things that encourage you to develop in a good way. And then you become an encouragement to others to develop in a good way. And this is so precious. It's so worth it. It's nothing else you can do with your life. Can your whole bucket list other than this, because it's not worth anything. To travel, to see this, to see that, to have this experience or that experience. You develop yourself. You don't have to control anybody else. That's where the action is. And you can do it. It's up to you. Yes, Joyce?
Oh, thank you for this topic. This is just so great. I hope this applies. I think it does. Ajahn Amaro was here in Berkeley sometime last year, and he gave a Dhamma talk, and I wrote it down in this old notebook, and I tore the pages out, and I just came across them recently. And it's really got me contemplating this a lot this week, and I think it applies. He said, we tend to live in theoretical positions, how we should be. And then he gave us an example. I should be sitting straight. And he said, instead of I'm slouching, what you do is just be aware and the body will straighten on its own. And I just really, really like that. There's so many ways in which it applies. And I would just like to have your reflections to see if it applies in the topic we're discussing now.
Yes, I do see it. Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you.
What it reminds me of is the Upakilesa Sutta, because in there, the Buddha shows all these different barriers to deep meditation, like, my concentration fell away when I had doubt arise. My concentration fell away when I lost focus, and so on and on and on it goes. But in each case, the Buddha says, when I realized that would happen, then I made sure that wasn't going to happen again. I'm not going to lose my focus again. And then you go, how the heck do you do that? And it's just like what you're saying. You become aware of it, it's like it's a suggestion that you drop into the mind, and that's all that's needed. If you've developing your mindfulness such that the mindfulness takes care of it, you're instructing your mindfulness to not let the loss of focus come into the meditation again. And you don't have to do anything else. It's that suggestion like, oh, I'm slouching, and the body raises up. Oh, I have this, I could lose focus. No, the mind stays present, bright and alert. And so that's the key. It's like we don't have to be so militant with ourselves. We don't have to be harsh. We can have some faith in the Dhamma, that it's right here, right now. We tap into it when we open, when we're present, when we're available, when we're confident, when we're still. It's okay. Yes, Joyce. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, it was just the part that I got that you're not saying very explicitly, but I think you're definitely leaning toward it, is like that whole thing about self-view, that I have to do these things. It's just that it's occurring in awareness.
Yes, yes,
Then
yes.
you can deal with it. But the I gets in the way of doing that. So that's it. That's all I want.
Yes, and what I want to lately, so sometimes people really talk to me about the problems they're having with the way Ajahn Sumedho talks about awareness, trust awareness, pure consciousness. Then he gave a talk. What the heck is pure consciousness? But what I think is that when he's talking about awareness, he's talking about that open, present connection to Dhamma. There's like a deep well of the truth of the way things are. And when that is touched by us, it arises in us. And we don't have to do anything. And it's not us doing anything. There's no doer anymore. So I think that's what thank you for that, Joyce. It's not about a self. When the ego is there, we're up a creek without a paddle. We gotta, okay. That's why I think the mendicants had to start with respectfulness. And what was the other thing? This is the quiz.
Conscientiousness.
Conscientiousness? No, that was later.
Reverence.
Reverence. Thank you. Excellent. Yeah. So I think that respectfulness and reverence is that humility and openness to being shaped by the Dhamma. That's what happens when we really let go of the ego, of the self, of doing something. Kieran?
Well, thank you. Thank you for this topic. I appreciate it. And I've been wondering, so I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. Um, I feel like I live in this reality where, so when you're a disabled person, like the environment is set up for able-bodied people. And so everything is a struggle because it's not set up for me, or other people like me. And so like when there's so much struggle, and then, on top of that, like the situation, my particular situation right now where I'm a very ill person. Like, I normally am like, in bed about 90% of the time. But I'm not able to do that right now. That's what I need for my self-care, but I'm not able to do that because Medicare doesn't provide caregivers for people.
Yeah, you're taking care of your mom. So yeah.
Exactly. So it's like, so what I find, I was thinking about what James said about, a mood or whatever, and it's like this orientation that I feel like crying all the time, like, because I'm so exhausted. like all the time. I'm just exhausted. And I feel like everything is like climbing Mount Everest, and oh, I have to get up and warm up some food again. And, when everything in my body cries out to rest, and I can't, it's like not an option. And so I was just thinking about like what if you have some idea. I get the question in it is knowing that that is how it is, like the environment is not set up to support people, um, lots of people, not just disabled people, but definitely disabled people. um, and to find where there's ease, like find, like how to, when you're in that state, it's so much harder to find skillful states of mind, um, because I want to cry. And so it's like then like that just sort of sets me up for um, not being in a great mood, or getting upset about something that it wouldn't really bother me, at other times when I'm able to get the rest that I need. So I don't know how to infuse those moments with, um,
Yeah, it's good to try different things. Like, does it help to cry a little while? Does that wear you down more? Does it help to think about the other people? Your friend who's got the long COVID and the kids and my God, I think about her sometimes. Um, the the world you know so well, there are so many people on this planet that it's not set up to serve. I'm reading this book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. When it was interesting, I underlined a couple of paragraphs where it talked about how if you want to be an anti-racist, you have to have this incredible perseverance and determination and be constantly self-critical, watching what you're saying and doing or not saying and doing to put an end to racism. You have to like really be, like listening and working with, and it's the same thing we need to do in changing in accord with Dhamma. It's like we have to be on it all the time with ourselves in a way, not harshly, because it doesn't help. But in your case, what you're talking about, first of all, my heart is there with you in that, and I think all of us need to do everything we can to set up the conditions for everyone in this world and not just blindly continue to enjoy our comforts without having that awareness of standing up. Because the Buddha did too. He stood up against, the caste system and every other different kind of superficial difference, and brought it to a focus of nobility that comes through any human being. So I don't know if it helps to think in those broader terms sometimes. And we always have to acknowledge what we're feeling, because suppressing it doesn't work. Feel it to some degree, but know when the turning point is so that we're not clinging to those feelings and those thoughts. I know you're coming to things like this. You soak up the Dhamma whenever you can. That's got to be a lot of help. So I think finding the ways, the connections you can make, really maybe those 4 powers, thinking about what you can do in that regard. The energy there isn't the physical energy, it's the mental, like shifting to the wholesome as much as possible. Maybe that's not an energetic, maybe that's not like a high energy effort, but a small movement that makes a big difference. I mean, thinking in those terms, we have to really monitor the mind, because whatever our situation is, whether, everybody, we're going through all these changes that life throws at us, whether it's our partner suddenly getting Alzheimer's and dementia. Maybe suddenly isn't the right word, but they're going down and you got to be there to take care of them. Sometimes when we're parents, we've got young children with problems and we have to be there no matter how badly we feel. There's all kinds of situations in life, and, like, I don't know where I was going with that. Do you know where I was going with that? Oh, darn. Sometimes even my auxiliary brain fails me. It's very good most of the time, though. But like looking at what it is that we can, what it is that helps, and different things help at different times. So like, people come and talk to us about all kinds of things that happen in their lives, and there's a tremendous amount of courage in all of us, in human beings, and a tremendous amount of fortitude. We can actually do and endure so much than we think we can most of the time. And to remember that it's temporary. The situation with your mom's not going to last forever. Looking at the tenderness in it, that's also nourishing. Looking at the changes that we've made in the past that have helped us, all the practice we've done helps us in the clutch, like when, and it may not feel like it's there. It may, sometimes people are awash in tears and stress, but actually their practice is buoying them up to get through it. And it's hard, but there's a resilience. And sometimes I think about the forest masters who, went out into the, really, really creating hardship for themselves in a sense by living in the rough and, meditating in where the tigers are living and, all this stuff, and trying to face the attachments to comfort, attachments to getting what we think we need or not getting what we think we need. I just want to encourage you to put some highlighter on the small good things and remember that you're strong and that you have friends and that you have a lot of wisdom that's been developing over the years, and that everything that you're having to walk through is impermanent.
Thank you, Ayya. That's really helpful. Yeah. And I've changed my mind so much. Like until 10 years ago, I pretty much wanted to kill myself every day. So, and I changed that, I changed my mind.
Yeah.
So I know it's possible.
And what an important example that is. Like who knows who's going to listen to this over how much time this is going to be out there in the world, and who's going to have that experience of every day wanting to kill themselves and to know there's a way out of that. So thank you. Misty?
I had a question that is probably unrelated, but we were talking about Ajahn Sumedho, and he often mentions Sakaya Dithi.
Mm-hmm.
Sakaya Dithi, the identity view.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's the idea that somehow this body and mind and all of its kind of faculties and aspects are a self. That's the view, the self view, or the identity view that is completely destroyed upon stream entry. And so how do we practice with that eagerness and intensity to change that perception and view It's to really look at the body very directly and see the changing nature of it and the falling apart of it and the unbeautiful side of it and the necessary detachment from it to have any kind of happiness, peace, and stability. And also the other khandas, not taking our feelings, our thoughts, our ideas, our great creativity, or whatever we think our, like abilities are, as something concrete, settled, permanent.
It's more like a process, right?
It is a
Like
process, or a whole collection of
a
processes.
collection of processes.
Yeah. And there's nothing stable there. You take it all apart, and it's a bunch of pieces that are constantly influenced by other things, and there's conditions there holding it together, and it's all going to fall apart. So it's to really kind of take that in first intellectually, then at a deep level, and wake up,
Yeah. Wake up.
wake up.
I want to wake up.
Yeah. Well, you're working on it, that's for sure.
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Misty. Lokan?
Yeah, so many thoughts with all the conversation that just happened. Um, you know, so I've been through hell in the last few years and back, and some things that I found helpful. I mean, everybody's situation is different. I don't pretend to know what others have gone through. We go through I went through my personal hell, right? Custom made and tailored for me. Some things I found to be super helpful. Ajahn Sumedho speaks of the Khanti Parami as, being at peace with a painful situation. I thought that was so inspiring to aspire to. Can you literally have the world fall apart around you and stay calm? And you probably can't, but just the attempt to do that is great. And I'm sorry that like so many thoughts on this. Shinzen Young has written this incredible book, The Science of Enlightenment. He used to be a Zen monk, and he puts mathematical equations to the practice. And one of the things he says is, pain multiplied by equanimity, and maybe it's not pain, but it's sometimes dukkha. I think it's suffering multiplied by equanimity, upekha, is equal to vishuddhi, or the purification of the mind. And that's, I mean, basically his idea is if you can actually be in a really bad situation, and he speaks of an experience of somebody who was dying of, I don't know exactly what the ailment was, but the ability to be able to face such, I can't even imagine it, situations with a relatively peaceful state of mind, and how that is transformative.
Yes.
So I think it sometimes sounds, you make this point about people who say, really, can I change this one thing about myself? So it's, they're not leaving the car door open. But it's, I think to me, the power of the Buddhist path is there are things which people say it's not possible to do that. It's not possible to be in hell and not, to be in a really bad situation and not be upset. But the point is, I think what they actually say is that, just because, what is it, you can actually be in a very bad situation and still not be affected by it, right? All your Tibetan monks who would have gone through torture for decades. So
Yes. Thank you.
sorry, a bit rambling, but yeah.
No, thank you for that. It's so true to be able to accept what's happening now, to accept the situation, to accept our own mind. I mean, one thing for sure is we have to accept the mind we have. And it doesn't, then we make changes, but first we accept. To be at peace with the way things are is huge. And you can feel the relief as soon as you do it. As soon as you
Yeah.
stop fighting the situation. Change, it's not about fighting the situation. Even changing something as big as racism. It's not about fighting it. It's seeing the way it is, being with, and it can be even, as you're saying, even more poignant when we're in it ourselves, you know, that point where your long-term partner says they don't want to be with you anymore, or your finances just fell apart, or you just lost your job, or you got that diagnosis, or whatever it is. If you can just be with that, take it in, see what you can do to feel it, and then do what you can to let go. To let go enough to just accept that first before you take the steps you need to take. It's huge. And like you said, to be in a situation where things are really tough, and there's always a silver lining, oddly enough, there's always good in every situation. There's always, you know, in these major crises that we experience, whether it's some kind of climate disaster or it's human caused, well, it's all human caused, I guess, but you know, like the kind of social unrest and all this kind of stuff, there's always something good that comes out of it. There's always noble action. There are people who are kind and generous. There's, you know, and to see those things that are positive and to
Yeah.
be able to be with it all,
Yeah.
with patience and kindness. This is huge. It's more than huge. And that gives us the space we need to cultivate in those experiences. And again, people talk about how the practice, you want to call it that, or the Dhamma, rises up in us in those moments. You know, that's part of the conditioning we're giving our mind day by day as we practice and put our attention on Dhamma. Then in those really challenging times, there's a good chance that we're going to feel the Dhamma more fully. Someone who just had a death of someone very close to them was saying how beautiful the experience was and how thin the veil becomes between this world and the next. And it's true. There's a holiness in it. I mean, that doesn't mean everybody's going to have a beautiful, kind of beautiful death. But it's like being with the way it is. Being with the way it is gives us opportunity for the truth of the way things are to arise in us. So looking for the parts that are wholesome, beautiful, inspiring, onward looking. You look at those qualities of the Dhamma, you know, apparent here and now, timeless, leading us onwards, available to be experienced by the wise here and now. That is here with us all the time. One of the big changes we make, even in the moment, is to be present to that. I think that's what Ajahn Sumedho is talking about. That's trusting awareness, or trusting Dhamma, trusting our access to Dhamma.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I went way over time. Thank you, everyone, for being so patient. And we're going to continue with the Daylong now. And please let us know. You can write it in the chat if anyone wants their sharing to be omitted from the recording. And we'll hang on for a little while to see if anyone says that. And thank you all for your practice. It's incredibly beautiful. And then we'll come back to the Zoom session at 1 o'clock and continue from there. For those of you in a time zone where that works for you. And I think maybe at that time a guided meditation, but we'll see what comes up. So take care, everybody.